It was marketed as the most revolutionary jet engine in a generation. 20% fuel savings, 50% fewer emissions, and over 12,000 engines ordered worldwide. Then investigators discovered microscopic cracks inside turbine discs, traced to contaminated metal powder, triggering the largest engine crisis in civil aviation history. 800 planes were grounded. Airlines were driven into bankruptcy. Repairs were promised in 60 days, stretching past 300. This is what happens when revolutionary technology collides with manufacturing failure, and the warning signs appeared long before anyone acted. In January 2016, Lufthansa took delivery of the world's first Airbus A320neo, powered by Pratt Whitney's Geared Turbofan. The launch marked the start of an era defined by bold promises: up to 20% lower fuel burn, 50% fewer emissions, and a dramatic 75% drop in airport noise. For airlines, these numbers weren't just marketing, they were the foundation of new business models. The GTF's secret lay in its gearbox, a planetary reduction system that let the giant front fan spin slowly for maximum thrust, while the turbine behind it raced at high speed for peak efficiency. This decoupling of fan and turbine speeds, a concept long considered too complex for commercial jets, was suddenly the centerpiece of a global sales blitz. Pratt & Whitney's executives and engineers called it a revolution. Airlines lined up to be part of it. By the end of 2025, more than 2,400 GTF-powered aircraft had entered service with 85 operators, and the company's order book surged past 12,000 engines. The numbers dwarfed anything seen in the history of civil aviation. Airbus, eager to outpace Boeing, made the GTF the launch engine for its A320neo family, and soon added the A220 and Embraer E-Jet E2 to the roster. For low-cost carriers and legacy giants alike, the projected savings, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fuel per plane each year, and compliance with tightening emissions rules made the engine seem indispensable. The GTF was sold not just as a product, but as a solution to the industry's biggest challenges: cost, carbon, and community noise. Pratt's marketing deck laid out a future where airlines could grow without guilt, cities could expand flight schedules without protest, and manufacturers could claim real progress against climate change. The hype was infectious. With every new order, the GTF's reputation as the engine of the future grew, cementing its place at the heart of the world's busiest fleets. Warning signs began to surface long before the headlines. By 2019, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation in India had issued an official notice, grounding several A320neo aircraft after a cluster of in-flight shutdowns. Inspectors, led by Anup Mishra, flagged recurring combustor erosion and premature seal wear, anomalies that were especially acute on routes through hot and dusty environments. Airlines logged shorter intervals between heavy maintenance, with field data revealing that engines operating in India and the Middle East were coming off wing up to 30% earlier than projected. Behind the scenes, technical teams struggled to pinpoint a cause. Early theories blamed software calibration or aggressive flight cycles, but the true source ran deeper. On December 31, 2022, a Lufthansa A320neo suffered a sudden loss of power during takeoff at Frankfurt. The incident triggered a forensic teardown at Pratt & Whitney's Advanced Materials Lab. Dr. Rashmi Patel, a senior metallurgist, led the investigation. Her team's analysis uncovered microscopic cracks in the high-pressure turbine discs. These cracks, invisible to routine ultrasonic inspection, traced back to foreign particles embedded in the powdered metal used to forge the discs, a flaw seeded years earlier, between November 2015 and September 2021, across 6 separate production campaigns. The contamination campaign had gone undetected, slipping through quality checks designed to screen for size, not chemistry. Iron and copper fragments, along with carbon films, created weak points that, under the relentless heat and pressure of flight, became the starting line for catastrophic failure. Regulators and airline engineers now faced a problem woven into the very core of the engine. The GTF's promise of reliability was fracturing, not from a single oversight, but from a systemic lapse in material control. What began as isolated reliability complaints was now revealed as an industry-wide threat, setting the stage for unprecedented regulatory scrutiny and corporate disclosure. On July 24, 2023, RTX, the parent company of Pratt Whitney, stunned the financial world. In a quarterly earnings call, CEO Greg Hayes delivered the news. A defect in the powder metal used to forge critical turbine parts would force the company to pull hundreds of engines from service. The statement was blunt. "We have identified a rare condition in the powder metal used on the high-pressure turbine hub that requires immediate inspection and removal of affected engines. We expect to remove roughly 350 engines per month over the next 12 months. The numbers landed like a punch. RTX announced a $5.4 billion charge to cover the cost of inspections, repairs, and warranty extensions. The market reacted instantly. RTX shares plunged nearly 9% in after-hours trading, wiping out $35 billion in market value within days. Analysts scrambled to recalculate their forecasts. SEC filings revealed the scale of the crisis. Hundreds of aircraft would be parked, revenue would evaporate, and the company's long-term earnings profile was in jeopardy. For investors, the GTF crisis was no longer just a technical problem, it was a direct threat to corporate solvency. The financial hit was not limited to one bad quarter. It was a signal that the fallout from a hidden manufacturing flaw could ripple through balance sheets and upend the economics of an entire industry. In the face of mounting losses, the question became unavoidable. Could RTX and the airlines that depended on its engines survive the largest civil engine recall in aviation history? The Federal Aviation Administration moved swiftly after the July 2023 disclosure, issuing an airworthiness directive on August 15 that left no room for delay. Every PW1100G engine built with suspect powdered metal was ordered in for ultrasonic inspection within 30 flight cycles or 90 days. The language was unambiguous. Any sign of a crack meant mandatory removal, no exceptions. Airlines scrambled to comply, but the scale was staggering. Between 600 and 700 shop visits projected through 2026, with more than 800 aircraft groundings at the late 2025 peak. Pratt Whitney's service bulletins had promised a 60-day turnaround for affected engines. The reality was far harsher. By early 2024, average shop times stretched to 250 days, then 300, and in some cases up to 360 days. JetBlue, one of the hardest-hit U.S. carriers, reported nearly a year between engine removal and return to service. The bottleneck wasn't just the inspections themselves, but a global shortage of replacement turbine discs and the specialized technicians needed to perform the work. To break the logjam, RTX launched a rapid expansion of its maintenance, repair, and overhaul network. 16 new centers opened across North America, Europe, and the Middle East, boosting throughput by 30% over the previous year. Even so, the surge in demand outpaced supply. FAA inspectors described a repair pipeline stretched to its limits, with engines waiting months for critical parts. The difference between promise and reality became impossible to ignore. Airlines that had planned for quick shop visits now faced season-long groundings, with hundreds of jets parked in hangars and on remote taxiways. The operational strain rippled through flight schedules, fleet plans, and bottom lines, setting the stage for a wave of bankruptcies and emergency financing across the industry. Go First, once India's fifth-largest airline, became the first major casualty of the GTF engine crisis. In May 2023, the airline filed for insolvency, citing a direct link between its collapse and the reliability failures of Pratt Whitney's Geared Turbofans. The scale of the disruption was staggering. Over a span of just 18 months, Go First removed 510 GTF engines from service, some for full replacement, others for critical inspections, struggling to keep its narrow-body fleet in the air. By April 2023, 54% of its A320neo aircraft sat idle, grounded by engine shortages and repair backlogs. Financial toll was spelled out in court filings. Go First reported $1.3 billion in lost revenue and extra costs, with the vast majority attributed to the GTF crisis. The airline's cash flow model, submitted to India's National Company Law Tribunal, showed that the engine removals and groundings accounted for more than 4 out of every $5 lost. In a desperate attempt to restore operations, Go First turned to emergency arbitration in Singapore. securing an order that required Pratt Whitney to supply 10 spare engines within 28 days, 10 more each month through the end of the year. The engines never arrived on schedule. The CEO's statement in the insolvency petition was blunt. "We placed our trust in revolutionary technology. What we received was a systemic failure." Go First's collapse wasn't just a story of technical problems. It was a case study in how a manufacturing flaw, microscopic cracks seated in powdered metal turbine discs, could ripple through an airline's business model, leaving half a fleet parked and a balance sheet in ruins. The bankruptcy sent shockwaves through the industry, raising urgent questions about risk, supplier accountability, and the real cost of betting everything on a single, unproven technology. Spirit Airlines, with 151 A320neo aircraft in its fleet, faced a crisis that would test every line on its balance sheet. By March 2024, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, citing a $400 million compensation shortfall tied directly to the GTF engine recall. 80 of Spirit's newest jets, more than half of its A320neo fleet, sat idle, awaiting replacement parts and repairs that stretched far beyond the promised 60 days. Shop visits routinely exceeded 250 days, with some engines off-wing for nearly a year. Each grounded aircraft meant lost revenue, mounting lease costs, and a scramble to maintain schedules with an aging backup fleet. The financial drain only deepened. In August 2025, Spirit was forced to file for Chapter 11 again. SEC filings revealed the full scope: $1.2 billion in additional maintenance reserves earmarked for GTF-related costs, a sum that dwarfed previous annual profits. The company's 10-K for 2024 described the recall as a contingent liability with no near-term resolution, and internal fleet logs showed a persistent gap between the number of available aircraft and the minimum needed to break even. Spirit's finance team, led by CFO Scott Harrelson, described the situation bluntly in a quarterly call. "We are navigating the largest operational disruption in our history." The numbers left little room for optimism. With 80 aircraft grounded at the peak and a $400 million gap in compensation, the airline's cash reserves dwindled. By late 2025, Spirit had become a case study in how a single supplier's manufacturing defect could push a major U.S. carrier to the edge twice. The crisis exposed the fragility of business models built on tight margins and aggressive fleet growth, especially when revolutionary technology fails to deliver on its promise. The GTF crisis did not stop at a handful of bankruptcies. Across continents, airlines scrambled to contain the fallout as groundings multiplied. JetBlue, with its A320neo fleet, was forced to cut available seat kilometers by 4%, a rare contraction for a carrier built on network growth. Lufthansa, Germany's flagship airline, faced a different kind of squeeze. To keep flights running, the company spent an extra $200 million leasing replacement aircraft, an unplanned cost that strained even a legacy giant's balance sheet. Hawaiian Airlines, operating a small but vital A321neo fleet, reported $30 million in lost revenue as inter-island frequencies dropped and tourists faced cancellations. In India, Indigo watched its GTF-related maintenance costs triple, a 300% surge that threatened to erode the airline's reputation for low fares and high reliability. Volaris in Mexico, another low-cost specialist, took a 30% capacity cut, its grounded A320neos leaving gaps on key routes. By late 2025, more than 800 GTF-powered aircraft sat idle worldwide. The numbers told a story of an industry in retreat, hundreds of jets parked, millions in lost revenue, and business plans rewritten overnight. This was not a localized defect or a single airline's misfortune. The disruption was global, cutting across business models, geographies, and fleet sizes. For every carrier that hedged its bets with mixed engine orders, there were others caught fully exposed. The scale of the crisis, by aircraft count, financial impact, and operational chaos, set a new benchmark for what happens when revolutionary technology meets a manufacturing failure on a global scale. CFM International's LEAP engine surged to dominance as the GTF crisis deepened. By the end of 2024, the LEAP claimed about 70% of new orders for A320neo and 737 MAX aircraft, a dramatic reversal from just a few years earlier. Airlines, stung by mass groundings and year-long shop visits, shifted their bets to the engine with a steadier track record. The LEAP's reputation for reliability and uninterrupted supply became its strongest sales pitch, especially as GTF-powered aircraft filled storage lots and airline executives faced mounting losses. For Airbus, the fallout was immediate and visible. The company cut the A320neo production rate from 63 to just 45 aircraft per month in 2024, not for lack of demand, but because hundreds of completed jets sat idle, waiting for engines. At one point, 12 brand-new A320neos left the final assembly line as so-called gliders, fully built but missing power plants, unable to fly passengers or generate revenue. Each undelivered airframe strained Airbus's cash flow and threatened its delivery targets. Guillaume Faury, Airbus's CEO, voiced his frustration in a press conference, warning that engine delays were negatively impacting guidance and ramp-up trajectory. The order books told the rest of the story. Airlines that once touted all GTF fleets quietly diversified, splitting future deliveries between GTF and LEAP to hedge their risk. The strategic cost of Pratt Whitney's manufacturing failure was now measured not just in grounded aircraft, but in lost market share and a fundamental shift in the balance of power among engine makers. Pratt Whitney's engineering teams faced the crisis head-on, launching the largest maintenance and upgrade campaign in the company's history. 16 new maintenance, repair, and overhaul centers opened across North America, Europe, and the Middle East, increasing the company's global MRO footprint by nearly a third in just 12 months. The goal was simple: break the repair bottleneck, get grounded planes back in the air, and restore some measure of confidence among airlines and lessors. Output of spare engines and replacement parts rose by 30%, but the backlog of work remained daunting. Inside the shops, technicians rolled out the D1 Durability Upgrade and Hot Section Plus programs, packages designed to address the root causes of early wear and extend engine life. These upgrades targeted the high-pressure turbine discs and seals, aiming for a new benchmark of 40,000 flight hours between major shop visits. At the same time, Pratt introduced the GTF Advantage variant, promising an additional 1 to 2% fuel savings and improved durability for new deliveries and retrofits alike. Maya Singh, a senior program manager, described the effort as a full-spectrum remediation, not just patching the symptoms, but rebuilding trust in the core technology. The numbers reflected the scale: 16 service centers, a 30% boost in output, and a redesigned engine that aimed to deliver on the original promise. In the background, the company's leadership pushed for a future where radical innovation could coexist with the discipline of robust manufacturing and global support. No civil engine recall has matched the scale or complexity of the GTF crisis. By late 2025, more than 800 aircraft were grounded worldwide, more than double the peak of the Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 issue and eclipsing even the Boeing 737 MAX grounding, which, while catastrophic, involved fewer aircraft and a different root cause. The financial damage from the GTF defect, RTX's $5.4 billion charge, a $35 billion market cap loss, and billions more in lost airline revenue, sits alongside the $2 billion that Rolls-Royce spent on Trent 1000 repairs and the $20 billion Boeing faced after the MAX crashes. Yet the GTF crisis stands apart. It was not a single software failure or a design flaw limited to one model, but a manufacturing defect woven into the metal itself, replicated across thousands of engines and hundreds of operators. Industry analysts now point to a shift in airline strategy. Surveys show that after the GTF recall, nearly 70% of airlines with new orders began splitting their engine choices, hedging risk by diversifying between Pratt & Whitney and CFM's LEAP engine. For carriers that bet everything on revolutionary technology, the cost was existential. For those who diversified, the pain was real but survivable. This is what happens when a breakthrough meets a fragile production reality. As the dust settles, a question lingers. Can airlines ever trust a single engine supplier again? Or has the GTF crisis permanently changed the calculus of fleet planning? Today, more than 800 jets remain grounded, some for nearly a year, while RTX absorbs over $7 billion in charges and airlines like Go First and Spirit fight for survival. This is what happens when revolutionary technology meets manufacturing failure on an unprecedented scale. The question now, after the largest civil engine crisis in history, can airlines ever trust the next promise? Thanks for watching. Share your perspective in the comments below.